Here with you tonight. I am a survivor and founder of a nonprofit 501c3 organization called Keeping Every Girl Free. But before we jump in, I love how the Lord works in this way. And Lynn, I thank you for your beautiful devotion. And that's really what the Lord has paralleled, put up on my heart, is this passage in Jeremiah. It's actually out of Jeremiah 9, and it's verse 23 and 24, and this is what he says. It says, "This is what the Lord says. Don't let the wise boast in their wisdom, or the powerful boast in their power, or the rich boast in their riches. But those who wish to boast should boast in this alone, that they truly know me and understand that I am the Lord, who demonstrates unfailing love, and who brings justice and righteousness to the earth, and that I delight in these things. I, the Lord, have spoken." And I think it's so beautiful to go along with that passage in Matthew. And as we kind of jump into this topic of human trafficking, it can be a very heavy topic. But what I'm excited to share with you tonight is that there's so much restoration too in this. I get to see it every single day. With the women that I not only get to go out and outreach to, on the streets that are kind of stuck in this, this paradigm of, money and control and things like that. But I also get to see the other side of it, which is really the restorative and recovery piece of it. And I'm grateful that, the Lord has called me to get to be a part of that today. Back to our ministry name, Keeping Every Girl Free. Our official foundation name, ministry name, is the Catherine Elaine Gallegos Foundation. It was created in memory of my late mother-in-law, and we have very similar stories. She experienced early childhood sexual abuse at home. She didn't have anybody to advocate for her. It kind of led her into a spiral of struggling with drug addiction growing up. She was in, multiple promiscuous relationships, had this ongoing struggle with mental health, and she didn't know that resources were available to her. So unfortunately in 2013, she did tragically take her life. And that was a very, it was sudden, it was tragic. We didn't quite know how to deal with that, and I was in such a vulnerable place at the time because I was just coming out of prostitution, and my mother-in-law she knew the Lord, and she was actually one of the first people I told that I had been walking into church, because church for me was a safe place. It was a place where I could get off of the streets, and it was a place where I could just come in, and I knew that if I was here in this place, then I wasn't, out on the streets, and I wasn't putting myself in vulnerable situations or dangerous situations. So she was one of the first people I told that I was, going to church, and that I wanted to learn more about Jesus. And so one of the first things she did was take me through the Gospels. So she really taught me about the person of Jesus. And then my husband's dad is very end times Bible prophecy. So I had the best of both worlds. He was teaching me about end times Bible prophecy. And at the time I actually had an opportunity to move in with him, and I was able to take care of him, and that's how my recovery process actually began, because I didn't know that resources and tools were available to me. So that leads us to Keeping Every Girl Free. The acronym is her initials. So K for Catherine, E for Elaine, G for Gallegos, which is how we constructed Keeping Every Girl Free. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, so our ministry, what is it that we do? It's really twofold. On one end of our ministry, I really want to outreach to victims, to girls that are on the streets. My heart is for street prostitution, because that's what I come out of. So I'm able to go back out on the streets now and let the girls know that there is hope available. So what I've done, what I've created with other survivors and other organizations that I've been able to partner with, we put together gift bags of just general basic hygiene products, a lip gloss and a bracelet and a little prayer card And then also the hotline information. So there is access, there is something that's called the Southern California Dream Hotline that an outreach team has created with me that I partner with. And then there's also a national human trafficking hotline. So meaning that if there is a victim in Southern California, she can call this Dream Hotline, and our advocates can work together with her to get her into a safe place, and then offer short-term care up to long-term residential care. If a victim is transported, out of a county or into another state, there's a national human trafficking hotline, and that hotline can be accessed from anywhere all over the world. They do have their number is 24/7 where you can call, or they actually have a text number as well, and that's helpful because a lot of girls do have cell phones on them, so they're able to put this number easily into their phones, which leads me to this portion. What I've created, I actually created during my time at Vanguard in my very last class, community development. My professor saw so much potential in me, and I really appreciated that about him. He allowed me to have a team, a small group put together, and our focus was on human trafficking. And so we came up with a community development idea, which is a way that we could get the hotline information into more places that were accessible, especially to victims. So we came up with the SOAP project, and that is what we presented to the class. And a year later, I had this hotline team come to me, which is a total God thing, and I actually put this project into a real life outreach opportunity. So we label soap bars and makeup remover wipes. I found that the soap bars are much more helpful to go into smaller motels because it's something that they need. It's a part of their inventory, and two, it's a way that we're able to partner with managers without them feeling like they're losing business or feeling like they've got to get law enforcement involved, because this is really just something that a girl, if a victim is in need, and oftentimes, I know Dawn knows this, but there is a law where hotels and motels are supposed to have the number posted, and they do, most do. I see it outside, at the front desk, or it's a lot of the motels in LA do have it posted right by the window. But in those smaller motels, you don't have to walk to the front desk. You can just go straight to the room. So I've created a way that if a girl is not able to access the front desk or talk to somebody at the front desk, this is a way where she has an opportunity to see this outreach label inside of a room. And we've gotten a really good response from a lot of the managers. A lot of the managers let us know that they've had girls come to the front desk, or they see it, they know it's happening, they just don't know what to do, and so this is a helpful way for them to advocate in their own community. And then the makeup remover wipes have been more helpful in hotels, bigger hotel chains, because they have a certain brand that they already work with. But a makeup remover wipe is very small, something that can be accessible in the bathroom or something of this nature. So I've seen that be a little bit more successful. And then we also put the makeup remover wipes in the gift bags, because we know that the girls, just at the end of the night, it is nice to have something to cleanse yourself with, and it's a great way for us to put the hotline information in there. Next slide, please. Along with the makeup facial wipe, there's a small business card that goes in there. This business card was created by one of the young survivors that I am having the opportunity to mentor. She's 24 years old. She's been off of the streets for 6 months. She's in a very good place right now, where she is empowered to know that she doesn't want to go back to that life, and she has a pretty good support system coming alongside her, and really championing the potential that she has. So together, her and I have created this little business card, and this is called the Hope Project, and that's really what her heart is as a young survivor just coming off the streets. And it's my hope too. I've been out of the life for 10 years. I've been in, a restored and healthy place for the last 10 years, and now it's really an incredible opportunity to get to mentor these young girls who are just coming, out of this like similar background and lifestyle. So our heart is really to let other girls know that there's hope. So that is the first thing on our card, is to never give up on hope. And then we've changed the wording a little bit to say, are you threatened? Because one of the things that Dawn and I have talked about is that human trafficking, and when you're a victim, it's really multifaceted. It's you're in a domestic violence situation. You've been sexually assaulted. That's is part of your job description, is to be sexually assaulted on a daily and 24-hour basis. You are also at risk for homelessness because you don't have safe shelter. You don't have access to permanent or safe shelter. And then sometimes there is like an addiction piece in there. There's some type of substance or alcohol that's being used. And then along with the exploitation or human trafficking piece. But oftentimes, like when you're a victim of human trafficking, you're not sure, you're not aware of that, because the vocabulary is a little difficult to understand, right? Force, fraud, and coercion, like what does that even mean? So we've changed the wording to say, are you being threatened if you leave? Because oftentimes if you don't make your quota, if you've done something to make your trafficker upset, like it could be a wide range of things, to where you're being either physically or verbally threatened. And so we hope that maybe that will catch more women or young girls' attention. And then we put the hotline information. There's the Southern California Dream Hotline, as well as the text number. And I've talked to girls that have had our phone number in her phone for 3 months, and it's just taken opportunity, it's taken time to build that relationship and rapport with her until she's ready to be brave enough to say, okay, like I'm ready to go. And I've had the opportunity to take girls to recovery as well, so that's just as special. We have a relationship with the Orange County Rescue Mission. They have emergency beds for us, and then there's emergency and transitional housing all over the United States. And then the bottom, our message is, it's time for you to dream again. And our message together, me and the survivor, we've put on the back of the card, to be strong enough to say no more, wise enough to know when to seek help, and brave enough to make the call. I did, and it saved and changed my life. So these are the little cards that go inside of the gift bags as well. And then can you change the next one? Just to transition a little bit, we'll kind of bring it out to a broad definition, and Dawn did an incredible job of kind of adding in some information that I didn't have in there. It's important to know that there are many slaves today in the United States. Some of the human trafficking statistics is that it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. The human trafficking makes more, I've heard, than Starbucks, Google, the NFL, and Nike all combined, like put together. It is the second largest criminal industry behind drugs. There have been over 16,658 victims identified, meaning that is less than 1% of victims identified, and I think it has more to do with that multifaceted outlook, paradigm. 43% of U.S. sex trafficking victims identified are minors. 71% are recruited by someone they know, so meaning a boyfriend, a friend, or a family member. 48% were known to be sexually abused. 90% of survivors stated on a survey that their abuse began at home. California, we've got San Diego, LA, Orange County, San Francisco, big major cities, lots of wealth. So traffickers will come in and out. I've heard traffickers come in for about 24 to 48 hours, and they're in and out, and they can make double what they would make in smaller cities or smaller states. And then the average age that a child enters into the sex trade is 14 years old. Next slide. All right, I do want to just kind of transition here a little bit and just share with you that human trafficking isn't smuggling, meaning that a person, a human being, doesn't have to be moved across borders in order for it to be human trafficking. However, I know that gets a little muddled because, you know, we do see labor trafficking. You know, we hear about cases where some, you know, we have foreigners here in the United States, or, you know, you kind of, or you see just in movies and things like that, this idea that a human must be like moved across borders. In the United States, there's actually more U.S. citizens that are in human trafficking than foreign trafficked, but it happens. All of it happens. Human trafficking, as Dawn said, includes force, fraud, and coercion, and human trafficking is an umbrella term for labor and sex trafficking. I do want to break down force, fraud, and coercion a little bit, just so that we have a greater understanding of it. You know, force can be the use or threat of force. I know for me, I was a young child when I was first trafficked, and my trafficker, I would often protect him, and I protected him when I testified in court, because he would threaten to hurt my younger sisters or my family. So that can be what force looks like. Fraud can be a promise of safety and protection. When I was thinking about what did this mean for me, like in my trafficking situation, or, you know, just throughout my story, and that's really what it's been. Like, fraud has been a false sense of safety and protection. And then in the labor sense of it, when you're labor trafficked, you're promised, right? You're promised a job, or you're promised fair wages, and then that doesn't happen. And we see that even in like magazines, like going door to door, or people selling things on the side of the freeway. That has to make us think too, like, man, how long has this person been standing here? Have they had water? Have they had lunch? And then what do those wages look like? Are they just doing it for room and board, or actually, you know, being paid like a fair wage? So that can kind of be what fraud can look like. And then coercion is psychological manipulation, intimidation. It can even be sexual manipulation or blackmail. And I thought it was interesting that the definition for coercion is instilling in the victim that he or she or another person would be charged with a crime, that the defendant believed the threatened charge to be true, and that the sole purpose was to compel or induce the victim to take reasonable action to make good the wrong, which was the subject of such threatened charge. So that really put things into perspective when I read that today, because the question that we often have is, well, why don't victims leave? And coercion has a lot to do with it, because what is choice with no options? You know, especially when you're just a child. When you're a child, or when you have all of these underlying factors, you really feel like you have no options. And that's really my heart for our ministry, is that we let girls, we are going out there, some boots on the ground things of letting girls know that there are options available. But then on the restorative side, I get to work with survivors, and we're undoing a lot of this trauma, a lot of, you know, the force, fraud, and coercion, undoing a lot of that. Next slide, please. All right, so that leads us into relationships. Oftentimes, trafficking very rarely begins with a violent abduction or with a stranger involved at all. It begins with someone that the victim knows, and it's usually someone that the victim loves or trusts. And there's something called grooming, which is a tactic that can be used to develop unhealthy relationships, to gain full control over a victim and manipulate them into cooperating. And this has been very true for my story. You can switch to the next slide. I've got some cute pictures of me up here. Thought I would lighten it up a little bit. But this is me. I don't have too many baby pictures of me, but it is really special. It's one of the most special things, like when I'm able to see pictures of when I'm younger, or like dig pictures up. Both of these pictures are from when I was in California. I was born in California, but when I was about 2 years old, probably between 18 months and 2 years old, my mom actually took me and my younger sister and moved us out of California to the Washington and Oregon area. So I mainly grew up in my early childhood in Oregon and Washington, and then my mom had one more girl, having 3 girls, 5 years and younger, before she was 25 years old. So she was a very young mom, and she had 3 babies when she was just a baby herself. And we were vulnerable. We didn't grow up with very much, grew up pretty poor. We didn't have a stable living situation, pretty rare when I was growing up. Didn't really have food very often. And my mom was just in and out. She was in a place where she wasn't prepared to have 3 girls. Definitely not 3 girls. But she was in a place where I think she has a lot of trauma herself, and so she wasn't able to be, a protective mom, and that left us vulnerable. And so what happened was she met a man that lived in our apartment complex, and he became a friend because he had a young grandson that was about the same age as my younger sister. And so my mom would meet up with his daughter from time to time, and they would play at the park together. And this girl was just a friend to my mom. However, she fell into a pretty abusive relationship, and so eventually what happened was this guy continued to befriend us, and he almost became like a part of the family. He hung out with our family a lot. And when I was 7 years old, they had made some type of a deal together. So I thought that this man was my mom's boyfriend. However, that was never the case. The only reason why he was in a relationship with her was so that he could groom and coerce her into selling her children, to which she did. So she ended up selling me and my 2 younger sisters to this guy for some set amount of money, a house and a car. That was their deal. When I moved into this guy's house, so one day he came and picked us up. It was not out of the ordinary thing because we hung out with him a lot. Usually we were with my mom, and then this time we were gonna come and spend the night at his house, and my mom would come sometime later, but she just never did. So I was one of 5 kids in his house. I was the oldest, 7, and the youngest was 2 years old. And we were in his house until I was 10 years old. Since I was the oldest, and my job was to protect my 2 younger sisters, I took the brunt of the abuse. He started grooming me through pornography at the time. So he had like a movie room, and he would. I was introduced to pornography, which was not unfamiliar to me because when I was starting at the age of 3, I was already experiencing sexual abuse at home. So there was something familiar about it, even though I knew it was wrong, and even though I knew that I shouldn't have been experiencing that from him. And I even remember thinking little like things that have come up now of like wondering like if my mom is gonna come back, like almost wanting her to come back, even though our relationship was so non-existent, or she was really physically and verbally abusive, especially towards me. But just wondering if she even cared that we were like going through that, or cared about what was happening. I do have to say that when I was 10 years old, an investigation got started because he raped one of my older cousins, and she was bold enough to say something, and so he did end up getting prosecuted and sentenced in 1999. And I'm grateful to hear that human trafficking vocabulary was beginning to come up in 1995, but it was so new, so they didn't really know how to deal with the situation, and their way of dealing with it was just to send me to California. So I came to California at 10 years old, moved in with my dad. Huge culture shock, because I had not been to school prior to that, so I started school when I was 10 years old. And I didn't even know basic grammar or math. So, it took me a long time to kind of catch up, and I really struggled in my identity and kind of finding myself for a long time. And I felt invisible most of the time going through school. Unfortunately, there was a situation at home where I started being molested by, major male figures in my family, and that further pushed me away. By the time I started high school, I was just looking for safety and protection, right? So I found that in relationships, and unfortunately, I ended up in many relationships with different guys, and looked to gangs a lot because I desired that protection, and that's kind of the same thing that happens for young boys, is they're looking for this kind of sense of protection or family, right? And they try to, it's an unhealthy relationship. But that's kind of what caught my attention, and I ended up in this like downward spiral of like promiscuity, being exploited and being trafficked until I was 25 years old. We can go to the next slide. So I kind of want to transition a little bit and talk about what human trafficking looks like in our community. Like, what does it look like today? Because we're dealing with a pretty major paradigm shift in what our kids are experiencing, and kind of the challenges and just the heaviness of what they're going through on a daily basis. These are from the Department of Homeland Security. They have really great infographics as well as videos, and I'm going to share some of those with you today. Just simple ways that we can have more awareness, and also just get to bring up the conversation, whether that's with family or friends or in our spheres of influence. So I wanted to share their kind of information with you, and then we can switch to the next slide. Yeah. Okay, family. All right, sounds good. So we kind of talked about traffickers, can be boyfriend, employers, family, friends, connections of mutual friends and strangers. You can switch to the next slide. And this is really what human trafficking looks like today. We're seeing it, a really big shift of predators engaging kids over long periods on social media to gain trust. And on the next slide, we've got a video that will kind of just explain this more.
Turns out he's not here.
Oh.
He had to cancel at the last minute. but wants you to meet someone he works with, and he'll tell you more.
You're not staying with me? I don't think...
Baby, I have to run a quick errand down the street, and we're already late. Don't want to make a bad first impression, right? I know you're mature enough to handle it. I'll meet you right back here when you're done. Just let yourself in, and he'll explain. You trust me, right?
If someone is making you do something you don't feel comfortable with, you can get help. Contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline. Causing someone under the age of 18 to engage in a commercial sex act, regardless of using force, fraud, or coercion, is human trafficking under U.S. law.
That's really good. Yeah. Would you quickly be able to just forward to the tips for parents, and that will be a good place to kind of keep our time.
Need me to do dinner again?
Would you, honey? That would be so helpful, working on tomorrow's applications. And your spaghetti is so good. How was your day?
Fine.
Just fine?
Yes, Mom. Just fine.
You okay, sweetie? Look, I'm sorry things have been upside down recently, but I'm trying my best. Things will turn up soon.
I know.
I read an interesting article about human trafficking. I know, not exactly light conversation. But I didn't realize that it happens here in America. There was even a case last week, right here in our county.
Someone got abducted?
Well, they weren't abducted. Apparently human trafficking isn't always abduction or involving people from foreign countries. The article said it could be way more hidden and may not look like what we think.
Okay.
It can be as simple as a boyfriend, parent, or friend forcing someone to do something for very little or no money, or in exchange for other things, like drugs, like sexual stuff, or other types of work too. And it affects not just women. Kids and men can be victims too. Apparently it can hit really close to home. You hear me, Mia? I swear sometimes I think you just tune me... Honey, are you okay? What's wrong? Was it the human trafficking stuff? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. Is there something else going on? You can talk to me. Tell me what's wrong. I won't be upset. Let me help you. Okay.
Talk to the young people in your life about human trafficking and exploitation to help them protect themselves from the crime before it happens. Causing someone under the age of 18 to engage in a commercial sex act, regardless of using force, fraud, or coercion, is human trafficking under U.S. law. Download Blue Campaign's How to Talk to Youth About Human Trafficking Guide, which can be found at www.dhs.gov/bluecampaign. If you suspect a young person in your life is experiencing exploitation or may be a victim of human trafficking, contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline or local law enforcement to get assistance. Never approach a suspected trafficker.
Thank you. All right, this is kind of a really good place to just segue. I wanted to make sure that I kind of left off with those videos. There's some really great resources on the Department of Homeland Security website, as well as Thorn or Polaris. We can leave those resources for anyone that's interested in learning more about the topic. But really what I want to close with is one today. I love that video so much because since my time at Vanguard, I now work at a safe house for teenage girls who are between the ages of 15 to 17 with a lot of these underlying factors. I've already had this to be a big part of their stories, but I get to be a part of their restoration and healing on a daily basis, so I'm really grateful for that. And then what I want to really leave you with tonight is that there's a space in the anti-human trafficking world for all of us. I learned about human trafficking at a very small event similar to this, but the one thing I do love about our ministry, getting to label the soap bars, makeup remover wipes, assemble gift bags, those are really small things, but they make such a huge impact because oftentimes girls just don't know that resources are available, and those are really just the tools that help the women or the teams that are going out on outreach, it's really the boots on the ground, to be able to reach out and empower women who are still on the streets. And then just as the body of Christ, like the power of prayer, keeping, outreach or different ministries and foundations just in prayer, as we continue to serve the women that we do and the populations that we do. But I'm really grateful for just the time that I've gotten to spend with you here tonight. I love to talk to you more, and just kind of learn about really where you see yourself in just different areas. The two pieces of advice I was given that really made such a huge difference for me was one, to read, and I love that you're getting into Dr. Morgan's book and just learning more about what the body of Christ can do, especially in the prevention aspect. It's so very important. And then two, just getting involved. I started getting involved with my local human trafficking task force. We have the Orange County Human Trafficking Task Force that has just tons of resources and opportunities, different events. And so that's really a way that you can get more involved, or just to begin to learn about maybe like where you see yourself like fitting in as an abolitionist. So thank